Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting, March 27th. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. We actually had a special recognition this evening, but we're going to schedule that to our next meeting to make sure that we could recognize all of the team and not just part of the team. We are going to get right into our first presentation. This presentation is from our Reval company, Richard Nagel. I can see Rich right there. He's the president of Northeast Reval Group. As you all know, because every door was knocked on, the town completed a revaluation as requested and, required by the state of Rhode Island. We've had a lot of dialogue about this. We've had all of our budget workshops last week, including Monday through Thursday, and then the Joint Finance Committee, which is the committee that approves the Bristol-Warren Regional School District budget, last night. All of these numbers are based off the reval that was completed. Rich is going to walk us through, and then we will probably hear also, if there's any questions, to Michelle DeMeo, our tax assessor, and also Julie Gosher, our treasurer. But Rich is going to walk us through how we got to where we got to, please, and also the steps on, if there's a question about it, what those steps are for our residents so they can understand better how those numbers happen. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you. Rich Nagel from Northeast Revaluation Group. Good evening, everybody. I do have my colleague with me tonight, Dan Ducharme, and he's got a bunch of data with us to help answer questions after I make a brief presentation. So our firm is located in Warwick, Rhode Island, and we have done several revaluations over the years in the town of Bristol. What is a little bit different about this particular revaluation is that it is a full revaluation. And what that means for folks that haven't really heard about that is that in the state of Rhode Island, there's a requirement for a revaluation project every 3 years. But the third year, the sixth year, if you will, are what's called statistical revaluations. So the ninth year, if you will, is what's called a full revaluation. The main distinction there, of course, is that we are out literally knocking on every door for every improved property. For the residential properties in particular, that means that our data collectors were in the field, knocking on the door, looking at the exteriors, updating the property record cards for any data that they could determine needed to be adjusted. If somebody was home when they knocked, by the way, we would ask for an interior inspection. And that was at the option of the homeowner if there was an appropriate homeowner present. If they were not home, our firm or our data collector would have left a sticky note to let people know that we were there. And that sticky note had a request, if you will, for them to call us and schedule an appointment to do that interior inspection. Later on in the process, we would have sent, and we did send, notices by first-class mail to anybody that did not respond to the sticky note or did not have an inspection on the first knock, and asked them at that point again to call us for an interior inspection. So we do the interior inspections on a full revaluation because we're looking to improve the information that the town has in the database. We're doing discovery work to see if there's been anything that's been missed over the years, and also we're getting a little more better information and flavor, if you will, of what's going on with properties and what's going on with different types of properties. The end result of that, by the way, was an entry rate of about 49.6%, so that does tend to run about average for what we find in other communities. The analysis part of this type of project really isn't much different than a statistical. In mass appraisal, we're using tables and schedules to help build a model to value the properties. We statistically test those models to make sure that they accurately reflect what's happening out there in the marketplace, what's happening with sales, and then we're able to tell whether or not the results make sense. Now, we'll actually be sending the notices within a few days, so people will have their results. But we do have some that we can share with you tonight, and we also obviously want to be available for questions. So let me just comment on a few things. So interestingly enough, for Bristol, your single-family homes, the median single-family home is up about 19%. What that means is the typical home in Bristol went from a value of $268,000 to $315,000. Condos actually were even, there was a stronger market for condominiums. Their median value started at $235,000, ended up at $320,000. That's about a 36% increase. Commercial, by the way, was more modest. It was 10 to 12% range for commercial properties. That's right in line with what's been going on around the state. And multifamilies are up about 20% as well. A quick note about condos. There's something going on. There's sort of a phenomena going on around the state and actually in the country. And it's sort of interesting to follow and see how it happens, what happens locally. And that is that the millennial generation is actually buying homes later on, or they're buying condos. They have a different lifestyle than the old style of, buying the home and raising the kids right away. In addition to that, the senior citizens, you've heard the phrase that 70 is the new 60 and so forth and so on. What's interesting about that is that population is downsizing and going into condos or even at times apartments rather than maintaining the single-family home and so forth. So we've seen strong. I remember it was only a few years ago that there were no condo developments in the works and the condo sales were down or flat, and now they're very strong. So we've seen that pretty much across the board in other communities. We've done 5 communities in Rhode Island this year. I will tell you that going back to the single families for a minute, the lowest median increase was about 12% in Situate. The highest on the single families was 28% in West Warwick. So you folks are following sort of right in the middle. And keep in mind that's also a 4-year gap. You folks had a 1-year extension on the reval cycle. So it's 4 years of market data rather than just 3. So those are the main statistics I wanted to get out there. Again, I can talk for hours on the mass appraisal process, but it's not that exciting, so I'd suggest
Thank you.
just open it up for.
We appreciate that. So.
I'll just open it up for questions and see what we can do here. So, anybody?
I think it was I think it's very interesting to understand that what you're basing your models on. The models are based on statewide, and also what's going on statewide as well. It's kind of you're looking at the town particularly, but in a way that
let me just qualify that a little bit. That the specific data is really Bristol-based.
Okay.
I wanted to give you a flavor that you're not really that you're sort of following the state trend. And what we're finding in other communities as well.
Okay.
So there's really no outliers here per se. But the specific sales, we have a 2-year sales study, very specifically in the neighborhoods and the styles of buildings and so forth. So to be precise.
Thank you. Clarifying.
I just had, I don't have a specific question for you, but I would just like, before we wrap up, for either you or Michelle to let people know what their options are once they get their appraisal, if they want to come in and they want to have someone go in and look at it or make an appeal. That's all. I just wanted to make sure that gets done tonight as well.
Why don't we answer that right now?
Oh, something, I had a little note on that and I kind of blanked out on that, but let me go through that. So when the notices go out, the notice will have instructions for folks that think that the value doesn't make sense or they would like to challenge the value, to have what's called an informal appeal with our firm. At that point, what will happen is we'll send the results out a few weeks later of those appeals, those informal hearings. Then folks will get their tax bills typically in July in Bristol, and the tax bill itself will have an opportunity, will have a description of an appeal process within the town. So it's sort of a second bite at the apple, appealing to a different body rather than the revaluation firm. So they'll have 2 opportunities there, and ultimately for somebody that's totally dissatisfied, there is Superior Court down the road. But 2 appeal processes informal appeal with us, and then a more formal appeal with the town later on after the tax bills come out. Great question.
Thank you.
Right.
I just had a question about the different communities that you looked at in Rhode Island. Were there any communities that were kind of similar to Bristol? And if there were any communities that were very much like Bristol, I'd be interested to hear a little bit about the comparison between them.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I think, about Rhode Island is really how really unique each community is in Rhode Island. I will tell you that there really is not as much similarity as you might think. Now, that's not to say that a 1,500 square foot Cape isn't roughly the same price here as it would be, in Middletown. But again, the problem is in Middletown is that 1,500 square foot Cape within walking distance to the beach. In West Warwick, which is not a similar community, and I just said that single-family median was up 28% versus the 18% here. Keep in mind that their median value started out in the 160, 170 range, now is up into the 200 range. So we started with a housing stock that was much more modest in price. And so that's why the percentage in a good market goes up, where your median started at 268 and ended at 315. So I can't sit here and say to you, out of the communities we did this year, North Smithfield, West Warwick, Central Falls, and I'm missing one, but I wouldn't say there's anything exactly like Bristol. So each community is pretty unique.
When you talk about the marketplace, it's really supply and demand sort of trend. I mean,
Right. Most people, I think, are sort of, I think most people are a little bit aware. They've seen in the newspaper now for a couple of years. We had a year 10%, statewide, 10% statewide for a couple of years in a row. 2 or 3 years in a row, really. I mean, unfortunately, we lagged a little bit behind the nation, but we've sort of caught up in the last couple of years. There were low interest rates, and there was some pent-up demand. Interestingly, there are shifts that happen over time. So, for instance, 4 years ago, we probably stood in front of you and talked about some of the high-end areas in town had gone up quite a bit more than, and maybe the more modest areas. This time it's the reverse. Some of the high-end areas in town are actually only up 10 or 12%, where the modest areas have seen the most increase. Even in the condos, there's some high-end condos that are up 10 or 12% rather than the 30%. So, but I do think that a lot of the public is aware of what's happening out in the marketplace. So,
with the single families, could you give me the example you gave before? If it was worth X number of dollars,
right. So, Tony, your median single-family home went from $268,000, actually $268,500, to $315,700.
That must be my house, probably.
Yeah, I think I looked at yours and raised it as much as I could. Not sure, but
Thought so. I'm outside the historical,
okay.
Just keep that in mind.
Actually, the historical area didn't go up as much as it did 4 years ago. So, yeah.
What other questions from my colleagues? I think that's a great point that you just made. There were, we'll call them hotspots, if you were,
sure.
or if you will, in the past, and it doesn't seem that happened this time, or at least not to the level that they did last time.
Well, things go in cycles. So, for instance, you can look at a place like Papaquasha. You can compare it. It's very similar to, Rome Point and areas in Bristol. And one of the things that happens out there is that people get tired of paying the taxes. The values get to a point where the taxes get so high that people just stop buying those properties, or they won't pay as much. And so there are shifts in the marketplace, and that's actually one of the reasons why revaluations are done on a relatively frequent basis. It's amazing how much change happens in the marketplace even within a few years. So.
Don't move, Rich, but Michelle, could you kind of expand a little bit on that process? So when the bills come out, when will the residents of Bristol actually see these adjustments? And then when would they come to you if they were in disagreement on those numbers?
So once they get their letters, they will have an informal hearing with
And we said that was when? I'm sorry, I missed that
So
part.
the letters are going to go out next week.
Thank you.
With the new assessments, and the information will be on the letter of how to contact Northeast to set up an appointment for an informal hearing. And once the new tax bills go out in July, they have, or anyone has 90 days to appeal to myself. I read them first. If I deny that appeal, it does go to the assessment board. So they have up until just about November 15th to appeal that tax bill. After it goes to the board, if they deny, then it would be Superior Court after that.
So the reason why we wanted to reiterate that is that this is a sensitive topic. It's an important topic, and know that there's a lot of systems in place to listen and discuss. Rich, you called it an informal hearing. Could you, without going too far into it, just kind of give an example of what an informal hearing would sound like and what you would talk about?
Yes, essentially what will happen, and by the way, I mentioned we're a War company, but the hearings are held here in Bristol, right next door in the, what's this building again?
Burnside.
Right. So essentially what happens is to make the appointment come in, one of our staff will sit down. It's about a 15-minute process, and they'll have the property record cards, so they'll have information about the property. And what we want to do is we want to listen to see first what comments the homeowner may bring in. For instance, something very typical would be, I've got water in the basement, or things about their home that they think might lower the value. In fact, one of the things we encourage in our staff on the phones when they get these phone calls, people tend to ask what should they bring to an informal hearing. We tell them, if you have a recent appraisal, for instance, that's a good document to bring. But many people don't have any documentation, but they have an issue they want to bring up. We say, bring us pictures. So if you've got water in the basement, or you've got a cracked foundation is a great example. That's a real detriment to putting a home on the market. Bring us a picture. So some of the appeals we'll listen to, and we'll say, something, we need to go back out and visit this property. And sometimes we're able to address it once we take a look at it. Now, keep in mind a couple of things. One is that the hearing officer from our firm will have no information about taxes. We don't get involved in the taxes. We're just looking at the value of that property and trying to make sure that it's accurately assessed. The second thing is we won't be making any decisions on the spot. We're there to gather information. We take that information back to the office, and that way when we have the database in front of us, and we can do the research to see whether or not there's merit or there isn't merit, or whether or not we need to do some more work on that property. So it's very casual. It's not. They don't have to come in. You don't have to bring in representation. I also tell people not to spend money at an informal hearing in terms of getting an appraisal or something. That's something I would recommend if you decide you wanted to go for a more formal hearing with the town. You may want to then up the amount of evidence or up the documentation that you bring in. But for an informal hearing, just come in, ask the questions that you want to ask, and give us the information about your property that maybe we don't have.
And for that formal hearing, do you have to be in person, or can you do it?
For the informal hearing?
Yeah. For the formal hearing that, say, you're disputing, do you have to be in person, or can you do it through other means?
Well, I just want to be careful. The informal hearing with our firm, which is going to happen immediately after the notices go out, as opposed to the more formal appeal to the
Sorry,
town.
the formal.
Okay.
The formal hearing.
So with the town, I'll let Michelle address that, really. It's a town process.
For the formal appeal, if you have representation, they can come on your behalf, and it's not necessary for you to be there.
Okay.
I do suggest coming, though, because just to hear why that resident feels that
Sure.
their assessment is incorrect.
So how many cases get disposed of at the informal hearing?
I'm sorry?
I mean, how many of the questions and appeals get resolved at the informal level process with your company?
How many changes maybe we make to the...
Yeah, like, I mean, if there were, there's some that you're going to deny,
Right.
and then they're going to go to the town.
Right.
So what is that percentage that you resolve and then that move on to the town, for example, roughly? In your history, it doesn't have to be just Bristol.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to follow any real pattern. I mean, we do. I would say the max we've ever done is probably in the 25% range in terms of making changes. It's probably more typical, 10, 15% maybe. But a lot of times it really does depend on the community, how long it's been since there's been good data. There's sort of a lot that goes into that. But there is no mandate, obviously, to not make any changes. We are just looking to get accurate valuation done. So if it deserves an appropriate change, then we make it without hesitation.
So, go ahead, Tony, please.
Now, the question is, I hear, that you have the informal, then the letters go out, okay, with the tax, at that point, that's the taxes, how much it's going to cost, correct? Is there a possibility of having an interim appeal there prior to the bill going out, so to avoid abatements?
So that would be the appeal with Northeast. If there is something listed incorrectly on the field card,
Right.
such as an extra bathroom, I will happily go out and do an inspection of the interior of the property and make those corrections ahead of time. But if they wanted a more formal process with an appraisal, or sometimes DEM will go out and deem it wetlands, that would have to be done with the formal hearings.
Okay, thank you.
So Rich brought up a good point, is that the bills, that there's no bills going out next week.
No
it's,
bill.
It's the new revaluation dollar figure. Our budget is not done yet. We've gone, as I mentioned, we've gone through budget hearings. Our public meeting or public hearing for the budget is on April 22nd. It's actually April 1st is when we vote on the provisional budget. That means that we vote on what we've talked about already to put it out into the public. Then the public has an opportunity to speak on that. So when you get your letter and your house went up, don't immediately panic. It's okay to panic later on. But initially, it's not based off our current tax rate. Our current tax rate is $15.36. The budgeted is much less than that. So because property values went up and there's more to tax, the tax rate goes down accordingly. So it is not, don't just take our current tax rate and apply that to the new dollar figure, because it's wrong. So that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
And there's a note in our assessment letter that goes out next week to that fact, just to try to remind them. So,
was there any other questions from my colleagues?
No, I don't know. Okay.
Michelle or Julie, or obviously the administrator, was there anything else that you wanted to add? No? Rich?
Great.
This was excellent.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. I could have gone on longer.
I'm sorry. You need to come right up to the microphone, if you would, please. And if you would state your name for the record.
Sure, thank you. It's Rich Falcone. In the analysis that you did, you had three categories: single-family, condo, and commercial, I believe. Is that correct?
There's more than that, but those are the major categories.
So those are three.
Right.
Within those three, how many of the total numbers, say X, Y, and Z, how many of them had quote-unquote real prices associated with recent sales that you used?
Dan, how many sales? If you give us a minute,
Sure.
we're going to log in and see if we can give you an exact number.
Is it possible that this,
those prices go
Rich,
a year, or
I'm sorry?
is it possible that we could answer this offline? Because I want you to get the answer to your question, but if it's going to take a little bit, and
fine.
oh wow,
Oops.
isn't technology wonderful? Go ahead.
Single family, there were 279 sales. Condos, there were 102 sales. And commercial, there were 13 sales.
And what does that represent in the percentage of the total in each category?
That I do not have available right now.
Okay, if you can get that.
I think we could give you the total numbers in those categories, and you could do the math.
Sure.
Yep.
I'd have to get them. I'd have to get them either written down or.
I'm going to ask that we
Get
take
that
this
later. Thank
offline,
you.
but I think this is a great question, and I'd love to hear the response to
We
this.
can email it to Michelle tomorrow.
And thank you. I'll give you my email address in a little while. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nathan, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. All set? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you coming up.
I'm Ronnie Schroeder. This is a quick one. I just would like some clarification. When the letters come out next week, if we want an informal hearing, could that trigger a visit to the house or have the informal hearing at the house?
The informal hearing would only trigger an additional inspection if it hasn't been inspected already, and if whatever is you present to them would warrant an inspection, but I think that's rare.
So the informal hearing and then possibly an in-home inspection?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say that we do have a few folks that can't make an informal hearing, and we will do phone hearings for those folks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That answers my question, yeah.
Roger Cruz, is there any information on that letter that will have the database of if the house has 3 bathrooms, 2, or bedrooms?
It'll have the website that you can log into to verify that information.
Is it available now?
No, it is not. The letters will go out Monday. It'll be available on Monday.
Yeah, when.
But that's just the price, not what's,
The letter will only have the value.
but it won't have,
No, you would
But
have
at
to
the
log into
same
the
time-
website.
Gentlemen,
Update
this,
that.
let me stop you right here, please. I'd like to answer the question, but I need you to use the microphone, and if you would, if one of you wanted to answer that question, because we can't hear any
I
of
just
it.
want to point
so.
out, the website is up now, it's always up. So you could go on right now to nereval.com, nereval.com, and look up and see what's happening with your house in terms of the information, the number of bedrooms, baths, et cetera.
our eval, right?
nereval.com.
But the Bristol database isn't the same as
It's
what your,
it's the exact same database.
Same.
It just doesn't have the new assessed value yet, which will be
But it would have-
updated next week.
but it has all the room count and
Yes,
everything else.
It has all that information right now.
Well, I know on my house it's wrong.
Okay,
I could tell you right from the thing.
right.
All right.
Can
But
you give that-
it'll just have an increased value, but it won't give you room count and all the other stuff.
The letter will not.
The letter won't, but you'll be able to go online, and that's a great point, and I would believe also the letter will include the website, so you can go and check that,
Correct.
right? So if you didn't get that and it wasn't clear to you, it'll be reiterated in the letter, so you can go and verify that. We're going to close it here, but I think that was a great point. Michelle used that already, is that if there's a substantive change, so for example, it says that you have 7 bathrooms and it turns out you only have 1, that's a substantive change. If it was something like, as Rich pointed out, there's water in the basement, that'll be something that you can do on a one-on-one. And if you didn't get the feel here, the point is that if you do have a question, even if you agree with it and you have a question, that's what it's here for. So you can talk about this. We're not pushing anyone away. We want to have the dialogue if you have a question. So, Rich, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you, Michelle, also, for giving us some clarity on that.
Great.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Clerk, I kind of snuck by you there with what we usually go through in the beginning with meetings, with minutes.
Not a problem, Mr. Chairman. The first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to pull HH 17.
So approval with pulling HH 17, and we'll hear that at the end of the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the submission of minutes of previous meetings, items A1 through 6.
Motion to approve previous minutes?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is item B1. This is an advertised public hearing. It considers the petition of Burr Peter Sebring, Bristol Oyster Bar LLC, doing business as Bristol Oyster Bar at 448 Hope Street. Request council consideration for transfer of the Class BV liquor license to Jordan Sawyer, East Bay Restaurant Group Corporation, same DBA and location. You have various recommendations provided.
So this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak against? Is there anyone here to speak against? Is there anyone here to speak against?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. What's this council's pleasure?
I move that we approve the transfer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the transfer. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I just want to be sure. I see that the, what was in question, it's been released, is that correct?
Yes.
It appears that it was, right?
Yeah, there were a couple of others filed. I believe everything has been released, or we have indications from the parties that they will be concluded at the time of the closing. And normally what the council does is it would make its motion subject to the conformance to all rules and regulations and also satisfaction of all debts. So on your behalf, I've already included that in the motion.
Yes, we meant that. We meant that to be in.
Very proactive, sir. Very. Was there any other discussion?
Unlike us, I don't accept that amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the first reading of ordinance 2019-02, and this basically removes from the comprehensive schedule of fees the camp fee, and it will allow you to replace that, as you have done with other fees that sometimes need adjustments, with a council resolution. So it saves the expense of amending the town code every time you would amend one of those fees. It basically frees it up for a more efficient change when necessary.
I think that makes so much sense. I move that we approve.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second for first reading. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay. The next item is item D2, and this is the petition of Jordan Sawyer, who is requesting a vittling license for the Bristol Oyster Bar. You have various recommendations provided.
Motion to approve the vittling license for Jordan Sawyer, doing business at Oyster Bar.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, just point of clarification. The hours of operation, are they continued the same? Were there any changes? I see 12. Okay, go ahead.
Jordan Sawyer, 450 Hope Street, Bristol, Rhode Island. The hours will remain the same from noon till 11 p.m., or I think we had 11:30 actually.
Appreciate that. Thank you. It was just a little unclear for me, but I appreciate that.
Jordan, since you're up there, this is your 30-second commercial. Is there anything you want to share with anyone?
I'm very excited to be a local business owner and be a part of this town.
Well, I can tell you that we're excited for you to do it. We're also, Pete, you did a great job. It is a wonderful establishment, and I'm sure it'll continue to be that way.
I plan to keep it that way.
Well, congratulations and best
Yeah,
wishes.
good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
We have a motion and a
Thank you,
second to
Peter.
approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
And item D3 is the petition of Terry Lynn Walsh, doing business as Calypso's Pet Salon, 576 Metacom Avenue, Unit 7B, requests council consideration for a holiday sales license.
Based on the recommendations, I make a motion to approve Calypso Pet Salon at 576 Metacom Ave, requesting for the approval of the holiday sales license.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is item E1, and this is the renewal of the cesspool licenses for the town. You have the recommendations provided by the town administrator and the superintendent of water pollution control.
Based on the recommendations, I make a motion to approve the cesspool license renewals for 2019-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And item E2 is the tattooing license renewals for 2019-2020, and you have the recommendations provided by the town administrator and the chief of police.
If Tony didn't say it, I was going to. Where's Halsey when we get to this part every time? It used to be a 20-minute discussion
I know.
about how horrible it is. And we would approve them anyway, but we would go through all of that. But I do miss that dialogue just a little bit. I really do.
That was the first thing that came to mind when I saw
I know,
this.
me
Two?
too, yeah.
I have some,
I know.
some old tapes, Mr. Chairman, we could play.
Old tapes. AMC classics, right? So what's this council's pleasure?
Make a motion to approve it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Halsey's not here, so no. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is the first item under your petition section, item F1. This is the petition of Gerald D. Normandin of 22 Ryan Avenue. Request council consideration to extend no parking areas on the east side of Wood Street, north and south of Shaw's Lane. You have recommendations provided by the Director of Public Works and the interim Chief of Police.
So I wanted to have a little discussion on this. I'd like to follow along with this recommendation as we typically do, but this was not the first resident that's brought this to our attention. I'm wondering if we could take a look at that parking, that no parking. Is it, and actually the administrator and I spoke about this recently, but you mentioned it may be smaller than the 15 feet?
Yeah, the north no parking is 15, the south is 12. There's no real standard, but in most places it's about 15. So we can try to adjust and do our best not to lose parking there. The police chief's in his recommendation, I think there's mention of was there no accidents there?
There was one accident at that location. It was on Shaw's Lane, but it was a hit and run where the vehicle was unattended. It was struck in the middle of the night, but it was on Shaw's Lane, so there was no accidents at the intersection.
Mr. Administrator, I'm going to put you on the spot. If we could take a moment, I think we just heard from somebody we've never heard from before.
Certainly. I was going to make an introduction. With us tonight is Interim Chief Brian Peters. A little bit about the chief. He's a retired deputy police chief from Portsmouth. He has a master's degree in criminal justice. He is current on various trainings, everything from BCI to professional standards, and we're lucky enough to have him as an interim basis until the police chief's process is started. You have anything you want to say?
Just thank you. I'm honored to be a part of the Bristol Police Department. Bristol has a great tradition here in this town and in the state and the region, and I'm honored to be a member, even if it's just on an interim basis.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
You came at the busiest time of the year, and we're going into the busiest time of the year.
So, Mr. Administrator, going back to that, if my colleagues are acceptable to this, I'd like to refer it over to you and then work with the departments and see if there's, not add another space, but maybe widen that one, if it would help offset that and make it a little bit easier to pull out of there. Is everybody okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Could we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to refer it to the town administrator and the police chief.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the petition of Albert Quito, doing business as Quito's Restaurant, 411 Thames Street. Request council consideration to install permanent awning and 18 by 8 foot refrigeration unit on north side of his building. You have recommendation provided by the interim chief of police and also from the Department of Community Development and the town administrator.
I make a motion we approve. However, pending on certain conditions that he meets all the clearance of the Bristol Historic Commission, coastal resources, and so forth. But there is quite a few criteria that you have to meet before we approve. But I would say let's approve it pending on the clearance of all these requirements.
It'll be simple if we say, if the motion would be to approve, subject to any other permits that may be necessary, because he may not need all of those, but any other permits that may be necessary.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion?
I just had a quick question,
Please.
and that is on the permanent awning. So it would not be coming down in the winter. I imagine that it's like sustains like what mile an hour of winds and things like that. Is that it's not going to be blowing around down there? Obviously, it's going to be like a permanent structure. Is that how it would be?
Mr. Quito, could you please?
Oh, I know. Yeah. I just want to make. Oh,
Welcome.
you're going to remove the top. You're just going to leave the other thing. Okay.
Please.
This is the guy who's going to put the awning up. His name is. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, Randy Pomfret, Awnings and Signs by Pomfret, and the cover is removable. If you had big wind it would come down and be put away like any other awning would be. The idea of it is to extend the season for him so he can have, fall hours rather than what he has now, which is not a very good setup for what he'll get a lot more business use out of the structure with what we're going to do to it.
Well, I don't have an issue with it. I just want to make sure that, we get like such terrific windstorms lately.
Yeah,
would it be coming down, like if you closed for 2 or 3 months, would it come down for those couple of months, or would you leave it up?
We would leave it up because it's very costly to take it off and put it on. And if we're not going to have a hurricane or, 100-mile-an-hour winds, then there's no reason to take it off.
Okay.
It will take heavy winds, but not hurricane force winds. So in that case, it would come down and then be reinstalled after the hurricane.
I'm not talking about the hurricane. I'm talking about all these other crazy windstorms that
it'll
we've been
take
having
snow
lately.
load and all that. It's an engineered structure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess my question has to do with the Coastal Resources Marine Management Council. Is if he has to go get a permit for that.
I think he's already been through that.
Okay, has he been?
The previous one, because the footprint doesn't change.
Okay.
The size is the same, and the look of it is the same. So where the water goes, which was all planned prior to that, drainage and all that was figured into the first setup. So it would just remain the same.
Yeah, so what I was worried about is if he did have to go that route, I wasn't sure how cumbersome it would be for him to do something like that. Because I don't know how often the Coastal Resources Management Council meets on issues like that. So maybe Diane can fill us in a little bit, or for the benefit of Mr. Quito.
Yeah, so we put that in as on the list of permits, because my understanding is anytime you change out anything, even if you re-roof, put new shingles up, CRMC wants a permit, but it's a maintenance permit, so it would be a less cumbersome application. And based on the description of the tent structure that's going to go up, I believe it would be a maintenance permit. And, it would be subject to them if they wanted to kick it up to their full board, but I believe it would be something easier than a bigger application.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And by maintenance, it means staff could approve it.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Yes.
Okay.
It's a more of an administrative review than going to the full council.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other discussion? So we have a motion and a second to approve the permission to install a permanent awning and an 18 by 8 foot refrigeration unit on the north side of the building. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is from Maria Barakat of 38 Collins Street, requests council consideration for the removal of an accessible parking space apparently no longer needed.
Make a motion to approve and refer to the Director of Public Works.
First reading.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So just a first reading? So motion for a first reading?
First reading.
Second?
There's a motion and a second for a first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the next item is the petition of Weidong Wang, requests council consideration to create a new Class BV liquor license for 205 Thames Street LLC, located at 205 Thames Street.
So for myself, I would be happy to consider looking at a liquor license for this property. But what's in front of us right now, we don't have enough information. So, for example, we don't have a menu, we don't have a floor plan, we don't have a separation with the areas there. So, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
This is only to basically start the process. Because there is no license available, the council has to make a determination whether or not it would entertain the idea of having a license. We haven't done this for a while.
Yes.
So the process may not be totally apparent to everyone. Basically, if the council has the appetite to add another license, then it would start the process, and then that would follow with a formal application which would include all of those things. What we have done in the past is we run a parallel track. The parallel track would be the beginning of the process to consider the new license by amending the ordinance. Okay, because right now there's an ordinance that says that there's going to be just so many licenses. And at the same time, the process would begin for the applicant. There's no guarantee, as we've said in the past, that this license would be for that individual. Okay, it's just that the council would be thinking about both of those things at the same time, and the conclusion would likely happen that the license would be created and it would be issued at the same meeting, which would take 2 meetings from this point.
So for me, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the creation of a new Class BV liquor license for 205 Thames Street.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there a discussion?
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead,
Aaron. I just wanted to know when so you anticipate being in there by when? I mean, in the summer, is it almost ready? The building's almost ready? Yeah. Whoever. I mean, are they almost finished and ready to be opened? And
Hi, Tom Bergenholz. I'm not Weedong Wang, obviously.
Right.
But Wilson couldn't be here tonight. He's up in Worcester with his other restaurant. But he wanted to meet all you guys, but he'll come to the next one, I guarantee you that. So to answer your question, right now we're looking for mid-June or end of June. Right now the work is going on inside the buildings, so you don't see much happening on the outside of the buildings, which is a good thing at this point in time. So there's a lot of stuff going on inside. The HVAC, the rough plumbing, the rough electrical, the walls have gone up. So that's where we're at right now. The furniture's all been ordered. All the stuff he needs for his kitchen has been ordered. So right now it's the end of mid-June to end of June. We ran a little late because there was a little delay on coastal resource management.
so you've been through all those processes already?
Yes, we've got approval for the deck that's going on the back. The steel has been ordered. That should be in 2 weeks. There's the patios going in next week on the back. So there's a lot going on down there.
Well, it's certainly done. It really looks good. I mean, you've really done a nice job down there.
I just want to have a beer there.
Well, you deserve it. I hope it's going to become free.
I'll echo Councilwoman's sentiment is that it's a really exciting moment. 205, I mean, those were pretty dilapidated properties, and then you go by them now, and they're beautiful.
Thank you.
You're doing a really nice job.
We couldn't have done it
really
without your help,
answering,
guys. So we appreciate what you guys have
I'm
done
excited
for
to
us,
see
too.
the finish.
So thank you for your help. All right.
So I guess my question is, if we begin the process of changing the ordinance and everything like that in future meetings and everything like that, is there going to be plenty of time for him to be able to have everything in place by that June time, so that if we do end up granting that liquor license?
So at the very next meeting you have, I'll have an ordinance in place for you to do first reading.
Okay.
And then we'll schedule the second reading for the time that the liquor license application would take place. So you can do, as Lou said, in parallel tracks, you'd be ready to do both things at the same meeting.
Okay.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't easily make the June deadline.
Okay. Thank you.
Time frame, I should
Good
say.
question.
How many liquor licenses do we have at the present time? Do we have that? If not, I would not get.
In that category,
Yes.
Mike?
I'm sorry. Want to know how many
Current liquor, yes.
presently?
As you look that up, actually, in a tandem question is, if my memory is correct, our last creation of a license was a limited BV license, correct? That was for Luke's Inn? Was that right? Was that the last one we created?
That may have been the last time, yes.
Okay. All right.
That was a little while ago.
The buffet on Mount Hope. Yes. I say Luke's, I'm sorry, it's the owner. Yes.
Used to be Tweets.
Tweets.
Yeah.
Is the number important, or should we
No, we
continue
can move on. That's perfectly okay. Then, because it's not going to change anything. I mean,
Right.
I'm in favor.
I want to say there's 28 of those, if I'm not mistaken, but
29.
You wanted to know how many licenses
Just
there were?
curiosity, basically,
Yeah.
was not.
I'll let you know as you go on.
So we have a motion and a second to, I'll say, take the next step on considering a creation of a new license. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
The next item is item G1A. This is the public service appointment of the Harbor Commission, two members, with terms to expire in March of 2022. You have two people currently serving who would like to be reappointed, David Miller of 70 Gibson Road and Richard Scott Medeiros of 8 Herzig Street.
Motion to reappoint David Miller and Richard Scott Medeiros to the Harbor Commission.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So the answer is 28.
Thank you.
28 BV licenses.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was right.
Okay. That's right.
The next item is item G1B. This is the Zoning Board of Review with term to expire in March of 2024. You have heard from Bruce I. Cogan, currently serving, who does not wish to be reappointed.
So do we know if the first alternate is interested in moving up?
I was actually going to suggest, and I think that's an absolutely great question. I was going to suggest that 2 of the 5 council people here have not had an opportunity to interview both the alternates, and obviously we want to put this out for advertising too. Our past practice has been to move up the alternates, but I'd like to give, unless there's objection to it, 2 of the 5 council people here an opportunity to speak with those applicants if they are potentially interested in that to move forward.
We have to make a motion on Bruce first.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept Bruce Cogan's resignation with a letter of thanks to the Zoning Board.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So we do have the alternate matter. Did you wish to just schedule interview for that one and perhaps resolve both at the same time?
That's perfect if everybody's
Okay.
amenable to that.
Yeah, no.
Can we have a motion to that effect?
So if the first alternate did get the thing, then the second alternate would move up to that, and then we'd be replacing the second alternate, correct?
Correct.
So we'll be advertising for both
If that's
things?
what the council chooses.
Yeah, we don't have to do it that way.
Right,
Certainly
right,
our
right.
past
But I mean, if
practice
we
has
do-
been
yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
but I mean, we would be advertising for both things in a way, correct?
Right.
For both, for the full-time position, and then for the
Yeah, I
part-time.
believe there's already
For the
an ad,
alternate.
there's an ad in tomorrow's paper
Oh,
for
okay.
it because it's
Spectacular.
just something that normally happens.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So we need a motion to call for interviews. Is that a fair assessment?
So move.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And we have also from the chairman of the Christmas Festival Committee, the request to add an additional member, Patricia Ferrick of 21 Sandy Lane.
So move to appoint Patricia.
I don't know how we could not have Mrs. Claus on the Christmas Festival Committee. I mean, really. It says, I love Christmas and married to Mr. Santa Claus. I mean, how could that be?
Not doing this,
Gotta
would
put it to work.
time stop? Would the snow not fall or
I
something?
mean, that would be like terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's
George
a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And finally, in the appointment section, you have from the fire chief the recommended Board of Fire Engineers for the, it should read 1920.
Motion to approve the Board of Fire Engineers for 2018-2019.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Before we go any farther, like I always say for this council in this town, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to give back to the community. This council and this town appreciates what you do. I know that there's lots of positions will present themselves here and there, and there's a lot of people that raise their hands in interest in being there. Sometimes they're not easy positions to do, and this town and this council appreciates it, so thank you.
The next item is item I-1, and this is correspondence from Emily Spence, the coordinator of the Bristol Substance Abuse Prevention Task Force, request council consideration for amendments to Chapter 2, Article 4 of the Town Code in renaming the task force to the Bristol Prevention Coalition, and also to remove the coalition from the auspices of the Department of Recreation. You have a recommendation provided by the acting director of Parks and Recreation and the town administrator.
Do we have to go to a public hearing on this? Or can we just approve it?
No, it's an ordinance. So you would have to amend the ordinance. So if you wish to follow this, it would be basically to refer it to the solicitor to draft the ordinance language.
So
Okay.
moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And you have from the Friends of the Animal Shelter, a request for the council to name essentially their entrance road, Foley Lane, and to install signs. You have recommendation provided by the Director of Public Works, Chief of Police, Town Administrator, and Zoning Officer.
I move we approve the request.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any other discussion?
Is there any need for a change of anything? No. Just
No, in fact, part of the recommendations that we would request that it's an unnamed, it's not a street.
Right. It's the address stays the
Right.
same.
It's
as
just
what it
like a
said.
driveway.
Yeah. So the address would stay the same. in terms-
Kind of like Walter Burke Way was the example that was given to me. So,
Oh,
yes.
okay. I follow you.
But it'd be weird to have that as Walter Burke Way, so we put that down in the park area. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, and the next is a request for executive session, which I'm assuming the council will take up at the conclusion of the public agenda. The next item is item I-4, and this is notice from the Department of Environmental Management regarding the replacement of the Silver Creek Bridge. The notice period ends April 12th.
So, Mr. Administrator, could you speak on this? I know that you had some recent dialogue with DOT.
We've been having meetings regularly on the Silver Creek Bridge replacement, and the application is in process right now for construction, advertising for construction. So they don't have anything official to release yet with the timeline, but I can tell you what they're looking at is some utility work this summer, and then next summer there would be a period of time where the bridge will be closed. And late in the summer, early fall, so that's of 2020. And the plan would be to get it done as quick as possible, whether it be 30 days or maybe 6 weeks, but they're trying to do it after the busy downtown summer season, so that's what the plan is. We're waiting there. As soon as they get the advertisement done, there'll be a public information bulletin, which we will get, and we can then disseminate it, and it'll have a much better timeline. Again, those are discussions we're having with the project engineers as recent as yesterday. They're not official dates until the contract is awarded, but I just wanted to reassure our businesses and the public that we're not expecting anything other than general road construction on Hope Street this summer. It would be next late summer, early fall 2020, where we're anticipating a road closure at the Silver Creek on Hope Street. And again, they're trying to expedite that replacement of the bridge as quick as possible. That's why they want to close the road, get it done, and get it restored as quick as possible.
Not that we have any say on the project because it's a state project. However, will we have an opportunity to see the design of the bridge by any chance?
Yes, all the construction documents, as far as I know, those are public. But they'll be doing a public information package that we can release. So as soon as we get that, we will disseminate it. But I don't have the town of Bristol doesn't have anything official from them yet. They just don't have it put together yet.
Thank you. So this is a receive and file, unless there's some other action the council.
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is from the fire chief. The council will recall that this matter was breached, council was briefed on it during the budget and the capital budget. activities. And he is asking for the opportunity to pre-authorize the purchase of a grant-funded fireboat.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
If I may, I have a memorandum from the fire chief. He's asking for a postponement. He's researching additional grant opportunities, and he'll come back to the council with an updated request.
So we can receive and file this, and it doesn't make sense to continue it at this point?
So moved.
Yep, second.
So we have a motion and a second to receive and file. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next is bid 903. This is the spring tree planting bid. You have two bids received. The first is from MON Landscaping of North Dartmouth, Massachusetts, in the amount of $28,475. And the second is from Central Nurseries Incorporated of Johnston in the amount of $31,235.
Motion to refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody else in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
And the next is item J3. This is bid 904. This is from the Health Equity Zone, a needs assessment planning evaluation services for an overdose prevention plan. You have two bids received. The first is from Data Corp of Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the amount of $29,435.95, and the second is from Analytic Insight of Lewiston, Maine, in the amount of $23,450.
Is it my understanding that this
Yeah.
is covered by a grant that was...
Yes, actually, Emily Spence, our substance abuse prevention coordinator, is here.
Hello, Emily. Welcome.
Hey, Emily.
Thank you. I'm actually here, though, with my Health Equity Zone hat on right now.
I can see
just
your
took
Health
off my
Equity
task
Zone, yes.
force, my Prevention Coalition
Good hat.
Yes, this grant, the Health Equity Zone received a grant from the Department of Health, which will pay for the evaluator. So we went out to bid to follow the correct process, and we're reviewing the bids that we've received today.
Emily, did this surprise you that there were no more bids that were any more local? I mean, even in the region, like, I mean, Maine, yes, a little bit,
Yeah.
but I mean, just like Boston, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut.
It did a little bit, but DataCorps actually has worked with local coalitions.
Oh, they have?
Yep, they came highly recommended from the East Bay Regional Coalition, and they've done a number of assessments for other coalitions throughout Rhode Island. So they're located, not locally, but they've done work. They know our community. They've done focus groups and needs assessments in the community already. So.
Emily, is this mainly to evaluate the opioid issue that's happening? Is that the main? Oh, Yep.
Yep. We're going to create an opioid overdose prevention plan and prioritize strategies, and we'll have some funding left over after implementing the needs assessment to fund those strategies. So it's a short-term grant, and we're kind of under the time crunch. It was supposed to run January through August, and we've had some delays because of the Department of Health, and also we're now shortened from April to August to get the assessment done, and then proceed with the strategy prioritization and then implementing the strategies by the end of August.
Any training with Narcan or administering Narcan?
We will do that out of a separate grant. We also
Great.
received a code grant, just under $10,000 code grant, so we'll be bringing Narcan trainings to the community through that grant, as well as nalox boxes that we'll be talking at a future meeting about. We'll be sharing more information about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Motion to refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? You guys are real quiet tonight.
Aye.
Thank you, Emily.
The final one in this section, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the Town Council, this is a bid that there was some difficulty with getting the specifications in the hands of would-be bidders. So it will appear on your next agenda. You could just vote to continue it to the next meeting.
Motion to continue to our next scheduled council meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Aye.
Aye.
See, we worked that. Anyway, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
We just
So
have-
quiet, so trying to move it.
We're getting punchy at the end of this. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
This is certainly not our longest meeting either. so-
I know.
HH 17 on the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Thank you. HH 17.
I just have a question. This, the single audit report, are we going to get a much fuller report than this, or some sort of, or did I miss that at some point?
This was, so the auditors came and presented the financial statement audit, which is the much thicker report you're used to seeing. The single audit is simply the sort of smaller report that you get. It's due March 31st, so sometimes it's included with the big financial statements, and sometimes it's a standalone report. This is a report that just provides the federal expenditures that occurred during the year. So there's not a whole lot to present on it, and certainly if you have questions about any of the grants or any of the expenditures, I'm happy to answer.
No, that's it. Just a simple question, and you're right, I should have saw the single
That's okay.
audit. Yes, thank you.
Can I have our motion to receive and file on that?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And now we have the individual council member agenda items, beginning with the chairman.
Couple things. The All Bands concert was very recently. It was March 12th. If you haven't been to one, make it a point to go. Yes, my son was there, and that's why I was there. So I gave it away on that. But wow, it was absolutely impressive. My son is in 6th grade, so that's kind of where they start with the band, and you could see and hear the progression as it went forward. And in fact, there was a 2 xylophone soloists. I know, I didn't know either, but it was absolutely impressive. I'm going to butcher both of those names, and I apologize, but Alea Carrion and Hamlet Hansen, if I'm saying that correct, I hope I am, just tremendous. And they were a perfect example of what else was going on there. It was well done. You could see the kids enjoyed themselves. You could see the teachers enjoyed themselves. And I was thoroughly impressed by the progression. Yes, I was impressed with my son, too, just so everybody's clear. But as it also, you could hear and feel that progression, and the enjoyment in the room was palpable. It was really just a pleasure. A few of us were at the most recent Eagle Scout Court of Honor. If you've heard us say this, it's because we have so many Eagle Scouts in Bristol. It's truly impressive. And I'm going to talk about not saying the name right. Is Tim Dermaradirosian, if I got that right, is the most recent Eagle Scout. And congratulations to him. And the last thing I wanted to share for this evening, actually there was 2 more things. I wanted to congratulate my colleagues. Nice job on getting to where we are in the budget. Mr. Administrator and Julie, our treasurer, and all of our department heads. That's a massive amount of work. The congratulation is getting to the end. It was a massive amount of work. We've talked about the reval in the beginning here. None of this is easy, and we approved or will potentially approve a budget that was about 1.7% increase from the year before. If that sounds low, it's because it is. It was a massive amount of work to keep spending to an absolute minimum. You've heard some success stories just this evening with getting grants. There's a couple people in this room, Diane, one of them, has had some massive success with grants. And those grants keep our tax rate down. So we're able to achieve things that we want to get done, but not spend direct taxpayer dollars on it, which is just impressive. So, but again, nice job to everyone. And that nice job is just the efforts that were involved to get to where we are at this moment. Last thing I wanted to do was talk about where we could go forward with some opportunities with Airbnb. This is something that's come up. Karen from Blythewald has mentioned a few times about maybe some opportunities. Are we following this as closely as we could? Newport has a good track record of following these, registering them, and then there are bed and meal tax that go along with this. Yes, because this is reality. This is today, like Uber is. This is kind of the Uber of the home, I suppose. And I'd like this council to potentially consider looking at that a little bit closer and seeing if there's opportunities to watch that, to make sure, and also make sure that those Airbnbs and the HomeAways and all of that follow our ordinances, too, with X amount of people in the home at a certain time. Most of them go unnoticed, which is absolutely wonderful. It's nice and quiet. But there are some that also are not so quiet. And I think that they can take a quiet neighborhood and make it not so quiet. And it's not just because it's an Airbnb. It's because the owner isn't there, potentially. But mostly was to take a look at this and see if there's an opportunity to make sure that we're regulating this properly. That's it. Thanks, everyone.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah, I would like to also echo the chairman's sentiment on the town budget. I want to thank the town administrator, the department heads, my colleagues, the school committee. It's not easy to keep a fair and balanced approach, especially when there's a lot of pull in different directions. But I think we all come together and we really present a fair and balanced budget. So I'm really excited about it. And I want to thank my colleagues, too, because I think every budget I learn something new. Somebody always brings some new curiosity and they ask certain questions, and so it never gets mundane. It's always an interesting process. So with that, I think we're moving forward with a good budget. And my second item is when spring has sprung, so Bristol, Keep Bristol Clean 2019 townwide cleanup. Just want everybody to mark their calendars. It's going to be April 27th, 2019, from 9 a.m. to noon. I know it's a couple weeks away, but I know everybody's a little bit busy, so put it down on the calendar. And it will be, headquarters will be at the Department of Public Works, and there'll be coffee and donuts served at 9 a.m. So that's motivation for you, a little sugar to get you going. But we have a beautiful town. I think we all chip in a little bit. We can get this place looking great. Have a good night. Thank you.
Mr. Texera.
Well, I'm here and echo. No, I would just like to echo actually the big thank you to all department heads and the administrator, for providing a pretty nice lean budget. So good work, and thank you to all of you. That's it. Simple.
Ms. Perella.
Mine will be simple, too. I'm going to echo the same sentiments because we've been very, very fortunate in the last few years. I mean, Tony, when you were administrator, and even Diane prior to you, it's compared to my frame of reference when way back when I was first on the council, it is, you all do a lot of work before it comes to us to really get it lean and mean, and there's not a lot of, I think people are under the impression that there's just a whole lot of stuff we could just go in there and cut. And I think we heard a reference to that last night at the school committee meeting, that we just have to really do better on our town budgets. But there's really not a lot there that is not either contractual or just to keep progress moving forward. So I thank you all very much, the department heads, Julie, Steve, the administrator, and my colleagues, but certainly Nathan, you as well. Everybody has their opportunity to say whatever they would like to comment about it and to keep the discussions going. And I think it does work out. And to Lou, our clerk, because he also keeps track of all of that stuff, all of our questions, and has to juggle all the schedules and trying to get all of us together. So you did a good job herding the cats this time around. So thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
I suppose everybody would be wondering why I didn't say anything good about the budget process if I didn't say anything good right now, right?
No.
No, this is it was a great process, and as a lot of you know, I'm a political scientist, and so by training, I study political processes, and so this was my first time being involved in a practical budgeting process, and I think my colleagues said it very well that. Not always we're going to agree on everything. We all came in here. We all talked to different people while we were campaigning, and I think ultimately at the end of the day that even though we might have some differences on things or where we might want to prioritize different types of things, the beauty of it is that we all work together no matter what, even if we disagree with one another, and so. And it's bipartisan. We're working with independents and Democrats and Republicans, and we're all working together, and we're all doing what's good for the town. So thank you, and thank you to the town administrator for putting the budget forward, and thank you for the chairman for walking us through that process or leading us through that process. Other than that, I want to second Councilman Sweeney's the date that he articulated for the Cleanup Day, 04/27. That's also the day that the cooling towers will be coming down. So the people that live on the east side of town, like the town administrator and myself, will have a different view shed. And some of you may have woken up on Sunday morning. I woke up on Saturday morning expecting at 8 o'clock to see 3 chimneys come down at the Brayton Point Power Plant. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I went on Twitter, and I discovered that they actually pushed back the date until Sunday. So I woke up on Sunday before church, and I was up at 5 o'clock with my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old, and we watched as those chimneys came down. And you know, it's an interesting time to think that some of these coal-fired plants are coming down like they are, and that we're starting to really think about new types of energy. And so, you know, it was such a great, cheap form of electricity at one time, but sometimes we didn't see the consequences of that. Sometimes we didn't see the consequences of the people that had to breathe that in, and the higher hospital admissions on poor air quality days and things like that. So people ultimately bore the cost for that. But I hope moving forward that we begin to arm our next generation with kind of the power to create new ideas and to think outside the box and think about new ways that we might be able to generate power and everything like that. And so with that being said, I'll look forward to watching that I believe it's in the morning, and then I will be out there picking up trash with everybody else on April 27th. So I look forward to seeing you there.
Town Administrator, agenda items.
Thank you. Now that we're getting over our hibernation from the winter, we're looking forward to picking up our capital projects again. Just a brief update on Tanyard. All 5 streets were crossed, Tanyard Brook, so there's still a lot of storm drain work and cleanup to do there. Jose's drainage project, that major project that'll prevent the flooding at the water treatment plant, that's just about wrapped up. They're doing some landscaping now. And there'll be road paving on Ferry Road in Fairview this summer.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
But, again, we're looking forward to the capital projects, road paving. I kind of gave a preview peek at what's going on at the golf course, because there is an enormous amount of talk that the golf course, which is owned by the town of Bristol, was closing. So I did get some information out there about a grant that Director Williamson obtained through the Estuaries grant. It's a federal grant, and that will allow us to make some water quality improvements that feeds Silver Creek, and also maintain and improve our existing 9-hole golf course. So it's really exciting, something we're really looking forward to. So we have good days ahead this summer, and the last thing I want to say is I really want to sincerely thank all 5 local unions, locals. There's 5 of them here in Bristol. They all have contracts, and they worked very well, and for the best interest, obviously, for their livelihoods, but also I think they were very fair negotiations, and they kept the interests of Bristol and what we do at heart. So I really want to thank them, and also our non-union employees who are always there to serve at any hour. So I want to thank all of our employees, and again, thank you to the town council for working with us during the budget process. And we're proud that it's a good, lean budget. We're conscious of the taxpayers, and we're also preserving the quality of life that we're used to. So I'm very proud of it, and so thank you very much. Good night.
Motion would be to convene into executive session pursuant to 4246(5)(a)(5), acquisition of open space and acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes, or the disposition of publicly held property. Also, pursuant to 4246(5)(a)(2), litigation regarding gladding shops versus Town of Bristol.
So move. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Night.